New maps, tier 11 tanks, vehicle rebalancing, free gold, free premium tanks, game fixing. Those are one of many changes that occurred on the Russian server. In 2022, due to war in Ukraine, World of Tanks split into two companies. Wargaming, managing the European, American and Asian server, and another company, Lesta Games, which has since managed the Russian server, with the largest number of players. After all, World of Tanks, or rather Mir Tankov as they call it there, is the most popular game in Russia and Belarus. Although many features are shared between the two companies for faster development and are released on both servers, many features are different and independent from each other, because these are two different companies, and the games are becoming less and less similar since the split of those two games, with the Russian version being just better. Let me explain why. Meanwhile, we enjoy an exciting replay from the Russian server showcasing the differences between the two servers. The tank that you are watching now is a BZ-75 without boosters but with a super strong autoloader. So let's start from the beginning. World of Tanks in Russia and Belarus is like a national sport. A lot of people play it. It was created there and it's very important to them. As an example, in August 2022, 13% of Russian males played World of Tanks that month. And it is estimated that around 38% of the Russian and Belarusian population has played World of Tanks at least for a while throughout the years. Many pro-European players have also accounts on the Russian server, and their opinion is that the skill level of players is generally higher, which was pretty surprising to me because I thought they, drank vodka while playing on some potato computers and that was all. When I asked them why they think the players are better, they said that generally players are more patient and push less, only doing so when necessary, usually in the mid or late game. This makes the game obviously less frustrating and rewards people that are patient and are playing pretty good. Also, YouTubers are skilled and teach the community how to play the game properly. Even though players are better, so theoretically you would do less damage per game, at least for them the game is more enjoyable because there is no mindless pushing, which can sometimes be frustrating, especially if Platon of 3 IS-7 is pushing you. It's not the best feeling ever. The battles are slower, as in the past on the European server as well. Another thing is that much more people here prefer playing heavy or armored tanks rather than fast and less armored vehicles. It doesn't mean that no one plays light tanks, but usually there is a visible majority of players in heavy tanks or more armored tanks. This battle may not be a perfect example of that, but trust me, it is possible to see even 7 or 8 heavy tanks per team. There are currently 4 more maps than on the European server, and developers plan to add many more things in 2025 with the huge Mir Tankov 2.0 update. More on that later. The maps that are available here but not on the European server are Minsk, Stalingrad and the brand new map Kamchatka. If you've played World of Tanks for a while, you probably know the first 2 maps, but there is also Kamchatka, which is completely new. A sad thing is that there is no map on the European server that the Russian server doesn't have. The newest one as of September 2024, Orstay Bay, which by the way isn't that new because it came out 1.5 years ago in March 2023, was added after the beginning of war in Ukraine. This is an example that Wargaming and Lesta Games are still cooperating to make new projects and share them. Basically, nearly all new things that are added to the EU server, from more important things, earlier or later go to the RU server, but about half of the content coming to the RU server unfortunately never reaches the EU server, so that's pretty sad for us. After all, they have more employees and resources, but do they? It turns out that not quite, as by the end of 2023, the companies had a very similar number of employees, 1,700 in Wargaming and 1,800 in Lesta. So it seems that the people at Wargaming are just slacking off. And obviously, Lesta Games has drastically increased its employees since gaining control over the Russian World of Tanks. Previously, they worked on World of Warships, and I believe they made this game as well previously. Now let's talk about the financial strategies of both companies. It's simple, Lesta is just way better. There are opportunities to win free gold very frequently. Last time you could get a free premium tier 9 Su-56, previously named the Su-1954, which by the way was deleted and replaced by the Object 263 on the EU server, and we still don't have it. You may remember this tank if you played World of Tanks for longer time, but yeah, so that's pretty sad. But you know, I think they will bring back this tank someday. Another thing that is rather a small thing but kind of a fun fact is that you can pay for workshop tanks using premium account on the Russian server as well, so it's a nice addition that they care about the players and make it easier to, for example, buy workshop tanks. In short, they are just more generous with rewards. New accounts and players also have an easier time. Another important gameplay changes that are already available are flamethrower tanks, which by the way are classified as an artillery, and I would call them an interesting addition to the game, but definitely not a game changer. However, it's nice to see another mechanic that may interest some people. Another thing you could notice is that the bulb, the sixth sense, is displaying for longer. On European server, after you get spotted, it is displaying for 3 seconds and later disappears even when you are spotted. Here on the Russian server, it is visible all the time when you are spotted, so it drastically changes the game, especially for light tanks and tank destroyers. Personally, I don't like this change, but it is definitely beginner friendly. Also, artillery stun has been nerfed slightly. It still exists, but they changed it in favor of non-ART vehicles. Another thing is vehicle rebalancing. I really am not able to list all the vehicle rebalancing that has happened since both companies divided, because there have been a lot of changes. And the meta is quite dynamic. Meta means the top tanks that are currently in the game. They do it this way that, for example, for some update, they announce that 2 tier 10 tanks will be buffed and their tech trees, and after that they will be nerfed but to a little bit better state than before buff. For example, they did this with the Concept 5 and M5 Yoh. They buffed the whole lines, both regular and premium tanks like the G-Sword 1010, for one update except the premium, and they announced it that later they will be buffed. But throughout this update it was the best tier 10 tanks in the game. Now these tanks aren't as strong as they were before buff, but they are still stronger than before. Recently they announced a rebalance of 40 vehicles, that's right, 40 tanks, including the Tiger II, IS-3, IS-7, Löwe and much more. Another thing that pro players that play on the EU server are liking about the Russian server is that there are no top of the trees. Maybe it's not the best for players, but you don't have a month where pretty much everyone is playing with some line. Finally, something that I think everyone has been waiting for. Tier 11 and the World of Tanks 2.0 update. This was announced only on the Russian server, but leaks from the news site and leak site What Express, which is usually accurate, suggest that it's also planned for the EU server, so no worries. Although it will look differently and have a different release date. So what is it? One day on the Russian World of Tanks site, a timer has appeared. It turned out to be counting down to the biggest update in World of Tanks history. Something that will make this game much better, and something that everyone has been waiting for. World of Tanks version 2.0, which, as the developers themselves say, will be the biggest update in World of Tanks history, bringing 11 significant game events and new features. After that, they announced more. One of the innovations is already known: the appearance of Tier 11 vehicles in the game. After 15 years of waiting, we finally have Tier 11 tanks in the game. And yes, those April Fool jokes about Tier 11 tanks will become a reality. But beyond that, Tier 11 tanks are already being tested by super testers on the Russian server in normal battles. They are fighting against Tier 10 and even Tier 9 tanks with regular players. I am going to make a video about it, and that's why I advise you to subscribe to my channel with notifications, as I will soon release a video about those battles with Tier 11 tanks. This will be from the perspective of normal players who played with Tier 9 or Tier 10 tanks and met a real Tier 11 tanks in battles. It will show how this will normally look in regular battles with large numbers of Tier 11 tanks. As developers themselves say, Tier 11 tanks will have special abilities like rockets and much more. According to leaks, the new Tier 11 tanks will feature 4-track mechanics, various visual effects such as shell casings, ejections and moving periscopes. So this attention to details show how much Lesta cares about the game. For example, one premium tank has already been released on the Russian server, which has shell casing ejections. Hopefully this will be also available on the European server and in bigger scale, because it is a small change, but I really like it. As of now, 6 Tier 11 tanks have been announced, with 3 being tested and 5 known in appearance. All of them are heavy tanks. However, on the EU server, according to leaks, there will be 12 to 16 Tier 11 tanks arriving instantly with this update. So maybe I was wrong, and the 1700 workers at Wargaming are indeed working on something big. One piece of evidence that World of Tanks 2.0 will also come on the European server is that there is a large number of job listings on Wargaming site, where they want to hire a lot of people for unannounced project. The announced way of unlocking Tier 11 tanks on the RU server is unusual and in my opinion doesn't make sense. After grinding to Tier 10, you don't simply grind XP on Tier 10 to get to Tier 11. Neither does it look like on console that you have a different tech tree not related to Tier 10 and lower tanks. Instead, you have to reset the line you want to continue, losing all progress except statistics, and grind the line again from the beginning of the tech tree all the way to the Tier 11 tank. If the MBTB becomes a Tier 11 tank coming from the T57 heavy line, it is quite possible because those tanks are quite similar. MBTB has an autoloader with 5 shells, 420 alpha damage, has great DPM and is pretty fast as on heavy tank. So imagine it is a Tier 11 tank, an older brother of T57 heavy. You would need to reset the line and grind from the T20 to get the T57 heavy again, and finally only then grind to the MBTB. This update hasn't been officially announced on the EU server, so hopefully it could work differently for us. And just to clarify, this is not related to the Project Cold War game with modern tanks. This is about World of Tanks, of course. Leaks suggest that the update will arrive on the EU server in summer 2025, while it is expected on the Russian server in January 2025. So there is quite a difference between them. But according to leaks on EU server there is more promises, so hopefully this will pay off. I would love to hear your opinions on this, and I'm reminding you about the giveaway for 2500 gold from my previous video. If you want to join, subscribe, like the video, write a comment with your opinion and World of Tanks nickname. And join the Discord because there will be results announced on the Discord, link in the description.